Once there was a woman who was very sick. Her sickness was a secret sadness, a bleeding that would not stop. For 12 long years it had been her constant companion, a shadow that followed her everywhere she went. Every morning she woke up, and it was there. Every night she went to sleep, and it was still there. The years passed by like a slow gray river, each one carrying away a little more of her strength, a little more of her joy, and a little more of her money. She felt tired all the time, a deep-down weariness that sleep could not fix. It was a lonely kind of sickness, one that made her feel different and separate from everyone else around her. She had visited all the doctors she could find. One after another they would listen to her story, nod their heads, and promise they could help. They gave her strange medicines and told her to do difficult things. The woman did everything they said because she wanted so much to be well again. She gave them all the money she had, coin by coin, until there was nothing left. But instead of getting better, she only grew worse. The doctors would just shake their heads and send her away. Her hope, once a bright little flame, was now just a tiny flickering spark, almost ready to go out completely. The world seemed to be full of happy, healthy people. She would see them in the marketplace, laughing with their families, carrying their children and living their lives. But her sickness kept her on the outside, looking in. It was like living behind a glass wall, able to see the world but never truly be a part of it. The rules of her faith said her condition made her unclean, which was a heavy word. It meant she couldn't go to the temple to worship God. It meant others would pull away if she came too close. It was a lonely, quiet life, filled with long days and even longer, sadder nights. But deep inside her, in a place no one could see, that tiny spark of hope refused to die. It was small and fragile, but it was still there. She held on to it with all her might, even when everything around her felt dark and hopeless. She believed, somewhere in her heart, that things would not always be this way. She didn't know how or when, but she held on to the idea that one day, she might be whole again. She yearned for a life without pain, without shame, without the heavy weight of her illness. She just needed a miracle, a little bit of impossible magic to change everything. Then one day, a new name began to be spoken in the streets and whispered in the marketplaces. It was the name Jesus. People said he was a teacher from a place called Nazareth, but he was more than just a teacher. They told stories of how he made blind people see and helped people who couldn't walk to run and dance. They said he didn't just have kind words, he had a power that came straight from God, a power to make broken things new again. The stories spread like sunshine after a long rain, bringing warmth and color to a gray world. For this woman, these whispers were not just stories, they were a lifeline. As she listened, a new idea began to grow in her heart. It was a wild, daring thought. The people said that just being near Jesus was enough to feel God's love. They said his power was so great, so wonderful, that it seemed to overflow from him. The woman thought about this day and night. The doctors with all their medicines had failed, her money was all gone. But this Jesus, he didn't ask for money. He asked for people to simply believe. The idea became a single, shining thought. If I can just get close enough to him, she whispered to herself, if I can only touch the edge of his clothes, I know I will be healed. This thought was different from any hope she had felt before. It wasn't a vague wish, it was a plan. It was a mustard seed of faith, tiny but full of life. It felt like the truest thing she had ever known. She didn't need to speak to him. She didn't need to bother him or make a big scene. She was sure she didn't deserve his attention anyway. She would be quiet and quick like a little mouse, just one touch. That was all she needed. The very edge of his robe, the hem of his cloak, that would be enough. She believed the healing power of God was so present in Jesus that it was even in the clothes he wore. So, with this one beautiful, brave thought lighting up her mind, she decided what she must do. She had heard that Jesus was passing through her town that very day. Her heart started to beat faster, a mix of fear and wonderful excitement. This was her chance. It might be her only chance. She had been hiding in the shadows for 12 long years. But today, she would step out into the light. She would push past her fear and her weakness. She would go and find this man named Jesus, not to ask for a miracle, but to quietly take one for herself through a simple, believing touch. When she finally found the street where Jesus was, her heart sank a little. It was not a quiet path, it was a river of people. A huge crowd was pushing and shoving, everyone trying to get closer to Jesus. They were all shouting his name, reaching for him, wanting his attention. The air was thick with noise and dust and the press of bodies. For a woman who was weak and had spent so long trying to be invisible, it was a terrifying wall of people. How could she ever get through? It seemed impossible. Every part of her wanted to turn back, to run and hide in her quiet, lonely room again. But then she remembered her plan. She remembered that shining thought, if I just touch his clothes. That thought was stronger than her fear. It was more powerful than the noisy crowd. So she took a deep breath and stepped into the sea of people. She squeezed between strangers, keeping her head down. "Excuse me," she may have whispered, but no one heard. She was pushed from the side, jostled from behind. It was hard to breathe. With every step, she had to fight. She kept her eyes fixed not on Jesus' face, but on the ground, looking for the hem of his robe as he walked. She was getting closer. Inch by inch she wiggled her way forward. Her body ached and she felt dizzy, but she would not stop. She could see him now, the back of his legs, the simple, dusty robes he wore. He was moving, walking with purpose, and the crowd moved with him like a wave. She had to be quick. This was it, her one moment. She reached out her trembling hand, her fingers stretching through the small gap between two people. She didn't grab or pull. It was the lightest, quickest, most desperate touch. Her fingertips brushed against the fabric of his cloak for just a second, and in that one, tiny second, everything changed. It was not a slow healing, it was instant. A warm feeling like sunshine flowed all through her body from the top of her head to the tips of her toes. She felt it immediately. The bleeding that had plagued her for 12 long years simply stopped. The weakness vanished. The pain was gone. She felt in her very bones that she was free, completely and perfectly healed. She pulled her hand back, her heart pounding in her chest. It had worked. Her small, secret act of faith had unlocked the biggest miracle of her life. She stood still, breathless with wonder and relief. At that very same moment, Jesus stopped walking. He had been moving forward, but now he stood still. The crowd bumped into him and into each other, confused. Jesus turned around, his eyes scanning the faces of the people pressing in on him. He wasn't looking for someone important, he was looking for someone specific. Then, he asked a strange question. "Who touched my clothes?" His voice was not angry, but it was full of a quiet power. He knew something amazing had just happened. He had felt healing power leave him like water flowing from a spring to a thirsty flower. His disciples were confused. "Teacher," they said, "look at all these people. Everyone is bumping into you. Why would you ask who touched you?" They saw only a chaotic crowd, a jumble of hands and elbows, but Jesus saw something more. He saw a single person's desperate faith. He kept looking, his gentle eyes searching, passing over all the loud and important people. He was looking for the one who had reached out not for attention, but for healing. He wanted to see the person whose faith was so big that it had reached out and touched the very heart of God. The woman knew he was looking for her. She began to tremble, not with sickness anymore, but with fear. Her secret was out. She thought he might be angry that she had stolen a healing without asking. Slowly, full of fear but also full of a strange new courage, she came forward. She fell down at his feet, the safest place in the whole world, and with tears streaming down her face, she told him everything. She told him about the 12 long years, the doctors, the hopelessness, and her one, tiny, powerful idea that touching his clothes would be enough. She told him the whole truth. Jesus looked down at her, and his face was not angry at all. It was full of love, like a father looking at his beloved child. He leaned down and spoke to her, his words a gentle gift just for her. "Daughter," he said, and that one word told her she belonged. "Your faith has healed you." He wanted her to know it wasn't magic in his clothes. It was the brave belief inside her heart that had made her well. "Go in peace," he said, "and be freed from your suffering." He saw her when she felt invisible. He healed her when she felt hopeless. And he gave her peace, telling everyone forever that even the quietest whisper of faith is heard by God.